Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, welcome to Illinois Stories. I'm Mark McDonald in Springfield at the Dana Thomas House. This Frank Lloyd Wright masterpiece recently reopened after being closed for a year for mechanical repairs. Now, not only is it open for tours, but they've begun living history tours here as well. And we took this opportunity to get back in to see the house through Susan Dana's eyes and those of the people in her life. Well, we get a chance to see this magnificent home with some of the people that know it best.
Yes.
And Amy Zepp, you have undertaken the role of Susan Dana for the living history programs that the Dana Thomas House has going on. And you got the plum role, didn't you?
In some ways, it's a little frightening too to try to take on someone with such a reputation and so many stories about her.
Yeah. But you are becoming Susan, right?
Yes, I'm always learning. There's always so much more you can learn every day about her.
I'll bet, I'll bet. Okay, Susan, now that you are Susan, let's talk about you a little bit. You're kind of an enigmatic figure. Everybody knows your home. Not a lot of people know about you.
Yes.
And you, as a matter of fact, were married twice. You had two children.
Actually, 3 times. Married 3 times, yes.
Had 2 children. But it was very unfortunate what happened to your children.
Yes, both of my children died in infancy, less than a year old, and having children is so important to me, and I love having children around, so I really wish I could have my own.
As a matter of fact, you took on a lot of causes which had to do with children and other social issues, didn't you?
Yes, very much. The women's suffrage movement was very important to me, but also just helping out in the local community, helping out the children. Just having children over for reading in the library or little parties and games for them was something I especially enjoyed.
You started your days in this room.
Yes.
This is your bedroom, and the sun would rise in the east with this massive window which would let the light flow into this room. What was it like waking up in this room?
Oh, it's so gorgeous. It's just an amazing way to start every day with all the sun coming in through Mr. Wright's beautifully designed windows. You just can't beat beginning your day in a way like that.
Yeah. Some people would look at this setup and it's kind of odd. There's this massive fireplace in the middle and 2 little twin beds on the sides.
Of course, that is the appropriate way to have your bedroom arranged with 2 separate beds.
And for a time you were married. That your second husband lived in this house with you for a time.
Very briefly, very briefly. He also died very suddenly and unexpectedly.
And your first husband, the one that you were married to for a long time, 17 years, died in a mine. In an accident?
Yes, a mining accident, a very sudden, very unexpected way for him to pass away.
Yeah, in fact, it was one of your father's mines out west.
Yes.
And one of the ways your father made the fortune, which you inherited and which helped you build this house, was the mining business.
Yes, both of the men in my life, my husband and my father, died very suddenly, very close together, which led me to really becoming in charge of this estate.
You know, one of the great things about this house is all the built-ins.
Yes.
And I'm looking over here. Now, you would get up in the morning, you know, you might have your coffee served over here, and this is your dressing table.
Yes, this is a dressing table, so you could sit here to make sure my hat was arranged properly, make sure my hair was done. And yes, I love especially the little built-in mirrors, so you can see yourself from all angles to make sure you are dressed appropriately.
Side, back, and front. That's kind of cool, yeah. And of course, you also have a built-in bookcase here too. So you could have, if you wanted to have your morning read, you could sit there or sit here and whatever you wanted to do. And the typical, you know, Frank Lloyd Wright furniture, just gorgeous furniture.
Yes, he designed everything in this house.
The house is full of it.
Yes.
Let's say that you have just gotten ready for a party. And you're up here and you've checked yourself out in your mirror, your 3-way mirror there, and everything looks good to go. You've had your help downstairs, your domestic help, make sure that all your guests are present before you enter, right?
Yes, exactly.
And why would you want to make an entrance?
Well, of course, I want to make sure everyone sees what I'm wearing, sees the latest fashions, and just to have a grand entrance.
A grand entrance. Well, you had the house for it. Yeah. Let's go take a look at what a grand entrance would look like after you, madame. Well, Susan, it looks like, let's just see if everybody's waiting for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay. Are they all here?
I think all of our guests have arrived for today, yes.
Well, it's time for you to go ahead and greet them, so you go ahead and make your grand entrance, and we'll catch up with you a little later.
Okay.
Well, Elizabeth Simmons, not too many people may know who Flora was.
Oh, yes, well.
Flora was a cousin who lived with Susan Dana in the Dana Thomas house.
That's true.
For years.
Right.
Now, first about you, though. Elizabeth Simmons is a social historian, is that correct?
Yes, I do specialize in social history of the time period 1880 to 1920.
Perfect.
So it is a
You're
perfect fit
for
the
the
house.
role.
Right,
Okay.
right.
And as cousin Flora, and the first thing that you do, of course, would be to take off your hat and gloves when you entered your living area.
Oh, yes, it would be a little strange to wear my hat and gloves in the house, but when I've just come in from the barn, you know, the groom takes the horse, and Susie just can't see to buy a motor, although many people have them more now these days, but we don't have one. So yes, he does take the carriage, and then when I come in the house, and certainly the first thing I want to do is get rid of my hat and gloves. So
this area that we're in right now is not on the regular tour. So
No,
our
it's
viewers,
not.
me and our regular viewers, they get a chance to see a part of the house that they wouldn't normally get to
right,
see.
I would say 99% of the viewers have never seen maybe more than an arm of the chair in here that they can peek in through the door. So yeah, it is.
And this is Flora's. This is where Flora, her sitting room.
Yes,
this is your suite.
Flora's sitting room. Yeah, it's right here, and the furniture and all is typical. As you might know, most of the furniture in this house is original to the house, but not all of the furniture. And so consequently, we furnished the rooms very easily because we knew what to put in them. But Flora used this room as a private sitting room, and in today's home, it might have been used as your living room. You might have your TV in there and your music and your computer,
Sure.
But they didn't have all those things, so she would read and sew and just lay out on the couch or do whatever she wanted in here, including take off her hat. So
You had your own suite, and take us through
Yes.
if you would, because
Yes.
they treated you really good. You had your own bathroom.
Well, actually, I was a member of the family, so it would be typical for them to have accommodated me according to their wealth and financial means. So I do have a suite here, and I unfortunately didn't marry. So I lived in the house all my life, about 55 years. I first came to live with my aunt and uncle Runa and Mary when I was 19 years old. I suppose they thought I was going to get married after a year or so, but it didn't happen. So I've been here all my life. When we built the new house and moved in 1904, then of course I had this very nice suite of rooms, and I've had them ever since. And this is the sleeping area.
You got a double bed.
Yes, and I have a double bed, and of course the house was built with built-in closet.
And that was rare in those days, wasn't it?
It was not common because houses were often taxed by things like amenities such as closets. But we wanted closets. Frank Lloyd Wright wanted closets, and so we did have them. I don't know if Cousin Susie mentioned to you, but this is one of the first homes in Springfield, if not the first home, that was built for electricity. It was designed and built with electricity. But even so, we weren't completely confident about electricity, so we did have one gas jet in every room just in case.
Yeah, and you can see the electricity that he provided kept the house very dark, didn't it?
Yeah, it was pretty typical for the time period, this type of lighting. People were afraid that the new electricity was bad for the eyes, and so they didn't really want it very bright. And then also still they hadn't all the bugs worked out, so sometimes homes, well actually fairly often, they would catch fire too.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of reasons why the lighting's fairly low.
Flora, thank you for bringing us into your suite.
You're
we appreciate
welcome.
that.
You're
It's very
welcome.
nice. Well, Susan, not to be rude, but we've just left your guests back in the entry hall again because I wanted to see what you call the living room.
Yes, this is the living room. It's part of the private area of the house, really, so only my closer friends would be in this area with me.
And we're directly downstairs from your bedroom.
Yes.
Okay. This is kind of set up, it almost looks sort of like business-like. It
Yes,
looks kind
it
of like
is.
an office, too.
Yes, it was used as an office, especially with the morning light coming in through the large windows. You could sit at this nice big table to do your bills or other paperwork, write letters, anything like that. It was a very nice space for that kind of work.
Well, as we're looking at this table, let's talk a little bit about your work. You know, we talked just briefly about the causes that you liked, but the suffragist movement,
Yes.
the women's being allowed to vote
Yes.
movement was very dear to you. You put a lot of time into it, didn't you?
Yes, I, as a woman who is running this household, that was a very important cause to me personally.
And the children's causes.
Yes.
And we've talked about that you tragically lost your two
Yes.
in infancy.
Yes.
And children, as I understand it, children are always invited to the house. And you
Yes.
always had some children's cause going
Yeah,
on.
all kinds of different little parties and games. They could come and check out books from the library, which
Mm-hmm.
I think you'll see later. You can see the library. And yes, it was just always nice to have life in the house and have children around.
And I tell you, there's a quirky thing about this house too that I want to show, and that's the next room that we're
Yes.
going to go into. Let's go in there and take a look. Susan, there's one room in this house
Yes.
that was left over from the old house, the old family home.
Yes, yes.
That was on this very spot when Frank Lloyd Wright built the new home.
Yeah, Mr. Wright designed the new house basically around our original Italianate style home that we used to have here. And for my wishes, he left this room pretty much in place. He did redecorate the walls and that a little bit to make it blend with the rest of the house, but it is a much different style.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And you call this the Victorian room, right?
Yes.
And you wanted this to remain because I guess it was very dear to your dad.
Yes, there's somewhat in a tribute to him to have a little piece of our old home still around.
You know, you see butterflies all over this new Frank Lloyd Wright house.
Yes.
But he didn't start that. Actually, that started some time
Yes.
before, didn't it?
Yes, these butterflies. This fireplace was part of the original house, and these butterflies were here, and we think it may have been a little bit of his inspiration, but also it's important to me too. I really enjoy the butterflies.
Yeah. And talking about your mom and dad for just a
Yes.
moment, your dad made the fortune that built this house, and he was a city father, succeeded at a lot of different
Yes.
businesses, didn't
Yes,
he?
many different types of industry, and especially in the mining.
And his name was
Runa.
Runa
Yes.
Lawrence. Okay. And your mother as well. Yep. And in tribute to them, in the Victorian room, you keep their portraits hanging.
Yes.
Michelle McHugh, we're in the library
Right.
now, and you play or become a very good friend of Susan Dana's, who was an artist, a photographer, a writer, and in fact, you had a pretty darn good job with a famous magazine of the day, didn't you?
Oh yeah, Ladies Home Journal, still around.
You're still around there. Okay, what century are we in here? Okay. But for this purpose, we're at around 1910.
Right.
And you're a neighbor, you live a few blocks from the Dana house. And you used to come into this library because you would collaborate with Susan on art projects.
Right. We did photography together, and Susan has develops pictures back there. So yeah. In fact, I took a picture of, actually, Susan took a picture of me and my daughter, and not only it says took and finished. Yeah.
And you were a writer of books, and I've gotten one of
Yes.
you. Actually, you brought one of yours, and this is the original deal.
Yes.
Lee Gross Day, Borderland and the Blue Beyond. And these
1908.
wonderful photographs. Now I'm going to show a couple that you took of Susan. And we just met Flora
Right.
down here. And you also wrote, I'm sure you did the artwork, and you wrote the script as well. And this verse is cute. We would find that Dame Fortune had laughed and had smiled, for the happiest time is the life of a child.
Yes, yes. Over half of the book is done on children, and some of it's hand-colored.
And Susan, the reason you and Susan really had an interest in children together, she would have children down in this library for activities of all
Yes.
kinds, wouldn't she?
Yeah, and over there's a built-in place to put ice cream. It's metal lined, you put the ice in there, keep the ice cream cold, and then you have all these wonderful baguettes to sit and read to the student. The children, they love to come, the neighborhood children love to come here.
We see toy horses and all kinds of things down here, activities.
This
for
is a
kids.
game table. You've got all these wonderful little cubbies to put things in, and underneath that's where the carom board goes.
And while we're in the library, you say that Susan probably had more volumes of books than anybody in town.
Right. She probably had more than the city of Springfield's library at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, she loved books.
Yeah, and Frank Lloyd Wright knew how to accommodate that interest for reading, didn't he?
Yep, she did. Yeah. Beautiful stacks. Yeah. And you have the big openings there in the drawers too, because if you had maps of the world, gazetteers, they're quite large.
Right.
They're quite large, and they take up a lot of room. So it's nice to have that, to be able to store those as well.
Thanks for the visit.
Thank you.
Kathy Leesman, you got to find yourself at some point on a tour of this home in the gallery.
Yes.
Because it's stunning, isn't it?
It is very beautiful. One of my favorite rooms of the house, with all the oriental, the barrel vaulted ceiling and the hanging tapestry. So I think Susan probably spent a lot of time in this room.
And now you play Mrs. Deneen, who's the first lady. You
Yes.
actually spent quite a bit of time here too, didn't you?
Yes, I've been here. I'm quite a close friend of Mrs. Dana, and we have some of the same interests, especially education for children, a better education, and a better life for children. My husband, Mr. Deneen, is working on getting a bill passed called the Maidens Act, and it's to give funding to dependent and neglected children, which will provide a safe place for them to go when school is out and they don't have to play in the diseased streets here.
As we look at these two gentlemen, the gray-haired man, the Governor Deneen that you were talking about, is playing a game with a neighbor, Mr. Brown. What is the game they're playing?
They are actually playing checkers, and I don't know who's winning, but
But it wasn't at all unusual for these gentlemen, the governor and this Mr. Brown, who founded the old law firm, which is still in existence here in Springfield, to have been invited to the house for dinner, social hour, games, those kinds of things. And while they were doing that, you got a chance to work with Susan over here on these causes that she was very involved in.
yes, we do share the same interest in getting, well, we work for women too. We would like to get the women's vote here in Springfield in the future, and we are working with some of the ladies. Jane Addams has been here, and we've been speaking with her. And we also, Susan actually lets children come in her library every Saturday morning, and we read stories to them, and they can actually check out books like a public library here. And we're just very interested in educating them. And also, Mr. Deneen is working on laws to improve the tenement houses that they have to live in, and give them a better life, better food. They usually get the rotten meat and that at the because they can't afford better. And he's also working on laws to give children a 10-hour workday instead of a 16-hour workday. So,
Well, thank you. Jan's up. I feel like we're getting ready for a real fancy lunch. We're in the, I guess this is like a breakfast nook or
This is
something?
called the Breakfast Nook.
Oh, it is?
where,
Okay.
Well, and I would have tea with Susan here. Yeah.
Okay, lucky you. And it's right off the main dining room, which you
Right.
can see would seat, oh gosh, if you wanted to, could seat a few
Up
dozen
to
people.
40.
40
Up
people.
to 40 people.
Wow. Now, I wanted to talk to you because, now in real life, you're Jan Zepp, music
Right.
teacher.
Right.
But in this other life that we're talking about today, you lived next door, and you grew up actually about the same time Susan did. You were both born about the time of the Civil War.
Right.
And your name was what?
Kate Hay.
Kate Hay.
Right.
Okay. And that Hay name keeps coming up. Hay, Brown Hay, the law firm.
Right.
You were the Hay, and your husband was the Brown.
Right.
Okay, all right. And their time was when your family grew up next door, there was a mansion there that your family
Right.
lived in.
Right. A beautiful, elaborate mansion. And actually, it started out as a smaller house, much like the Lawrences did. And when I went away to finishing school from the ages of 14 to 18, while I was gone, my father enlarged the house so that when I came home, I became the lady of the house because my mother had died when I was 10.
Oh, okay.
So,
all right. So when you decided to get married then, your husband joined you in the family
right,
home.
right.
And in fact, you even had a child there, didn't you?
Yes, we have 3 children altogether, and yeah, it was nice bringing it up with 3 generations in the household.
Yeah. Now, it would have been very normal for you and your husband to be invited to Susan Dana's home for
Right.
social events, Christmas, those kinds of things. What was the first Christmas like when she had this house?
The first Christmas in the new house was 1904, and Susan had, and Mother at that time, Mother was still living then, Susan's mother, and together they hosted 6 days of parties. The first night was unheard of because she invited all the workers and their families who had built the house, and it was really quite nice. And then each evening a different charity or, people, not homeless people, but people who were charitable in the city, disadvantaged in some way. Right.
Would have them in for a Christmas party.
Right.
And she did that for 6 nights in a row.
6 nights.
To sort of like usher in the house. Huh?
Right.
Show the house off to the community. And you, having grown up next door, knew Susan almost your whole life.
My parents say that I was 4 years old when the Lawrences moved here, so I don't remember ever not knowing the Lawrences.
And you and Susan actually had the same heart for a lot of the causes that you worked on. What did you and Susan work on?
Well, I was one of the directors of the Home for the Friendless, and that was one of the groups they invited in for that first Christmas. And we were also in the Women's Club together, and they had many causes that they worked on over the years.
So not only you and Susan were born about the same time, you grew up about the same time, and then you ended up living your adult lives next door to one another as well.
Because Susan also brought her husband here to live. That was when it was still the old Lawrence house, before this house.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the visit.
Thank you.
The Living History Tours are available the second Saturday of every month. With another Illinois story in Springfield, I'm Mark McDonald. Thanks for watching.
Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you. For a DVD copy of the program you've just seen, send $19.95 to Network Knowledge, P.O. Box 6248, Springfield, Illinois 62708. Be sure to include the program name, subject, and when the program aired. You can also order with your credit card by calling 800-232-3605.